Fully detailed report. Russia's disinformation machine in Africa exposed from the inside. This is a Rethink report. Let's break it down. For years, Russia has been accused of covertly manipulating African nations through propaganda, disinformation, and political destabilization. Now, for the first time, a former journalist has come forward with direct insider testimony, revealing how the Kremlin-backed Wagner Group orchestrated a vast disinformation network to manipulate elections, spread anti-Western sentiment, and expand Russian influence across Africa. This revelation is not just about Africa, it's about how Russia has weaponized media control to reshape global politics, using fake news, social media infiltration, and state-controlled narratives to push its interests. The question now is, how far does this network extend? And more importantly, how many governments, media outlets, and institutions have already been compromised? The whistleblower inside Russia's propaganda machine. The investigation was sparked by Yalakin Gonzo, a former journalist from the Central African Republic who unknowingly became a key player in Russia's disinformation network. Yalakin Gonzo initially believed he was working on a peace-building media project aimed at promoting stability in a nation struggling with civil conflict, poverty, and foreign military interventions. But as he dug deeper, he realized that he was part of a highly coordinated Russian propaganda operation, one controlled by the notorious Wagner Group. His tasks were clear: praise Russia's involvement in Africa while portraying it as a liberator from Western colonialism, discredit Western governments, NGOs, and opposition figures by branding them as foreign agents, flood African media with pro-Russian narratives, ensuring that local populations began to see Moscow as a protector and the West as an enemy. At first, the strategy seemed subtle: small shifts in messaging, reframing Russia's military presence as peacekeeping missions rather than foreign intervention. But over time, the operation evolved into full-scale media control, where independent voices were drowned out by state-backed propaganda. How Russia is controlling the African narrative. What makes Russia's influence so powerful in Africa is that it's not just about traditional propaganda, it's about dominating the entire media ecosystem. Pro-digital infiltration, fake news, and cyber warfare. Here's how the network operates. 1. Fake news networks and controlled media outlets. Russia has built an extensive network of fake news websites, radio stations, and newspapers across Africa, all disguised as local African media. These outlets push pro-Russian messaging while silencing dissent. 2. Social media manipulation and AI-driven propaganda. Wagner Group cyber teams flood Facebook, WhatsApp, and Telegram with pro-Russian content, using AI-generated accounts and automated bot farms to amplify disinformation. Fake journalists, deepfake videos, and coordinated hashtag campaigns are deployed to influence public opinion. 3. Strategic partnerships with African governments. Russia offers media training, financial incentives, and political backing to African leaders willing to support its narrative. In return, these governments adopt Russian-aligned policies and cut ties with Western diplomats and institutions. 4. Targeting and silencing opposition journalists and activists to expose Russian influence are harassed, arrested, or even assassinated. In countries like Mali, and Sudan, pro-Russian militias have openly targeted independent media. The scale of this influence operation is staggering. Wagner's control extends into Central African Republic. Pro-Russian propaganda dominates national media. French and U.S. diplomats have been expelled based on fake news reports labeling them as coup plotters. Mali, pro-Russian campaigns justified the expulsion of French troops, allowing Wagner mercenaries to take over security operations. Libya and Sudan, Russian disinformation has fueled political instability and armed conflicts, with Wagner operatives controlling key economic resources like gold mines. Why Africa? Russia's long-term geopolitical strategy. Africa is not just another region for Russia, it's a geopolitical battleground in the war for global influence. For decades, France, the US, and the UK maintained dominant influence in many African nations through economic aid, military alliances, and trade agreements. But Russia has been strategically dismantling Western influence by offering military protection in exchange for loyalty, supplying weapons and paramilitary forces to unstable governments, spreading anti-Western sentiment through aggressive disinformation. The ultimate goal is to create a bloc of African nations that align with Moscow's global agenda, shaping United Nations votes, securing access to Africa's natural resources, and weakening Western diplomatic ties. By controlling narratives, Russia is not just shifting African politics, it's reshaping the balance of global power. How the West is failing to counter Russia's influence. Despite clear evidence of Russian disinformation, Western governments have struggled to counter Moscow's growing grip on Africa. Attempts to push back have largely failed for several reasons. Western media has lost credibility in Africa due to historical ties to colonialism. Social media companies are unable to keep up with AI-driven disinformation networks.
African governments have little incentive to expose Russian influence, as many benefit from financial and military support from Moscow. Even after Facebook, Twitter, and Google removed thousands of fake Russian accounts, new ones appeared almost instantly, demonstrating how Russia's digital influence campaigns have evolved far beyond traditional fact-checking capabilities. At the same time, France, the US, and the EU have failed to offer Africa an alternative, allowing Russia to fill the power vacuum. This isn't just about one continent, it's a warning of how disinformation can be used to manipulate global politics at an unprecedented scale. What happens next? Can Russia's propaganda machine be stopped? Despite growing concerns, Russia's influence in Africa continues to expand, with new disinformation campaigns being uncovered every month. Western intelligence agencies are calling for stronger cyber defense measures to track and dismantle Russian-backed media networks, greater support for independent African journalism to counter propaganda at the local level, international legal action against Russian disinformation operatives operating under the Wagner Group. But will it be enough? The problem is bigger than just one region. If Russia has already successfully taken control of media narratives in Africa, where else has this strategy been deployed? Are Western elections next? And if a single journalist can expose all this, how much more is still hidden beneath the surface? This is not just about Russia. This is about the future of truth, democracy, and information warfare in the 21st century. Follow Rethink Report for the full story.